Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to walk through creating our employee ID card using InDesign and InDesign's variable data function to create these cards. First thing, I had mentioned that the design would be up to you, but the dimensions of the card itself is 3.375 by 2.125, and it's just one up with no margin and no bleed on it. Now the reason why we only do it one up is because normally when we're printing employee ID cards, you usually use a specialized printer just for that function alone, and it only prints the card one at a time. So that's why we only need to have the setup for just one card, and we'll be using this template to be able to print those if you had that machine. So just go ahead and make sure that we have the size correctly before you put together your design, and I'm going to go ahead and say OK. The other thing is when we're using that specialized website, and I know if you've been there, it's kind of freakish because if you just refresh the page, you'll get a brand new image. And some of the stuff is pretty amazing what it can do. Some of those are kind of a flub. Depending on if there's multiple people in there, it tends to get the person in the middle correct, but the people on the sides get kind of jacked up a little. And even once in a while, the program will hiccup, such as this guy here that only has half of a eyeglass on his face. So his glasses, it looks like he's wearing a monocle or something, but once in a while it glitches, but that's the problem when it's generating random photos on the fly like that. But anyway, since we're going to be using this site to get our pictures rather than look for these free websites with free portraits, we just download these and use these instead without having to worry about any copyright since these people don't exist. The only problem with this site is that the photos that it creates are basically square. So what we want to do is make sure when we design our card with the photo on it that the frame, I should say, that we put the photo into has to be square. So in this instance on mine is set to 1 inch by 1 inch. So that's just something to be aware of if you're using that website's photos, that they do when you download those, they come out square. And to download them, all you have to do is just right click on the photo that you want and save it down. Okay? Once you get the 10 photos that you want to work in, I'm going to show you how we can size these correctly, and they do all need to be sized the same for use in InDesign with that variable data function. So we're going to pop over to Photoshop, and I'll show you kind of a neat trick when you're sizing photos, and they all have to be the same size. Alright, so this is not a Photoshop class by any stretch of the imagination, but I can give you this one little tip, and if you guys already know this, and this is just a review, but for those of you who don't, this is a nice way to resize a number of photos that you're going to be doing, and it all has to do with the crop function. Now when you do the crop function, you have some options on the top. And on here, you'll see there's, under the ratio, there's width, height, and resolution. Now, if you select that, you will get to put in the information that you want on the size and the resolution. So I'm going to go ahead and put in 1 inch, and I can let the program figure out what that would be in pixels. 1 inch by 1 inch. And for printing on these cards, we can get away with, well, let's go ahead and just go with 300 ppi. So here we are. We have width, height, and resolution. And now if we just double click on it, we now have the photo resized. If we go under the image and go to image size, you'll see that it's set to 1 inch by 1 inch by 300 pixels per inch. All we have to do now, and let's just do a save as. And I'm going to go ahead and give him a name. And we can go ahead and leave it as a Photoshop document in case we need to go back there and make any adjustments. We can just use the native file instead of saving it down as a JPEG. I'm going to go ahead and save this down. All right. Now, if I go ahead and open up a second one, you'll see that the crop, if we have the crop tool selected, all that information that we put in earlier works. And we just have to double click it. And the photo is now resized to our new dimensions. There we go. And that's a quick way of doing all these different photos to the same size, because it's going into the same frame. That's what we want to do, is size them all correctly. Now we're going to create a blank spreadsheet for this project. And the first thing we want to do, and here's my example here, is we want to give each column a label that corresponds to where we're going to be using the information in our InDesign project. So we have one for first name, last name, their ID number, the department they work in, the job title, and the actual photo we're going to be using. Now, the most important thing in here when we're setting this file up in Excel is the label that we give for photo. If you look over here, you'll see that it has an apostrophe before we put the @photo in there. So you got to make sure that is an apostrophe, ampersand, and then the name of what you want to call it. In this instance, we're calling it photo. You got to make sure that's in there, okay? So that it knows that this is a graphic. That's the whole reason for that. All right, now that you understand that, I'm going to go ahead and populate this file, and we'll see the difference with everything already on there. Okay, I've went ahead and populated the file, put all our names in, so we know that this column has all the first names, this column has all the last names, and I used a numbering system on here for their IDs, what department they're from, what their title is, what they do, and then I turned around and gave the names of all the graphics we're going to be using that we created over in Photoshop. And one thing you have to be sure that when you are going to put this together, that everything is all in the same folder. When you create this project for this ID card, make sure that you put it in a folder, and all the photos in this instance will be in the same folder with the InDesign file. Okay? So it's going to be looking for that. And make sure that the name that you have here, the name of the photo itself, is the same name of the Photoshop document, okay, that's in there. And you can't misspell it or make the words all the same, all run together, okay. Make sure the way it's in that folder is the way it shows here. And the easiest way to do that is after you create all your Photoshop documents, what you do is you highlight the name and you copy and paste the name directly into this Excel file to be sure that there are no typos or errors in the name, so that it completely matches. Okay? Now, the last thing we need to do is to turn around and save this down as a CSV file. Remember on the other one where we turned around and exported this out, we saved it down. Now what we're looking for, just like last time, we want to use the MS-DOS comma separated file, and make sure you save that out. And then we're ready for the next step, which will be in InDesign. So we have our photos sized and ready to go. We have our Excel file that we created and saved it down as a CSV file. We have that all ready to go. It's now time to put everything together. And so we're going to go over to our data merge panel. And let me go ahead and just peel that off. And we're going to attach the CSV file. And you'll see we have all the items in there, okay, including the photo. So all we need to do is use our text tool. We're going to select the first name and click on the data merge function. We're going to select the last name and click on the last name in the data merge, and you'll see these placeholders appear. Now don't worry about this moving around because it'll all look good when we go to the preview. We'll select the ID number and click on ID number here. Same thing with the department. And the job title. Now the last thing we need, let me go ahead and select our square, and we're going to go ahead and click on the photo, and that will allow us to pull in the photo right out of that folder. So let's go ahead and click on our preview. And now you'll see all the information comes in. The photo, first name, last name, ID number, the department they're in, and their job title. And if we go to the next person, same thing. All that information comes in. Photo, name, ID, department, job title. And that's for each and every person that we have put in there. All comes in dynamically. So, once you see that it works, all you have to do from here is create a merged document, and you're just going to do it for all the records, and it will generate a brand new file, and you'll see that all the individual cards are now ready to go, ready to be printed on that specialized printer. Pretty cool? All right. So that's the end of our demo. And the last thing you should do is save this down as a file, and you're now ready to print. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll see you in the next video.